Okay, so, this video is going to be about Watchmen, which I finished a couple of days ago, the first book, and I'm just gonna kind of talk about it. This, I don't have this stand set up or anything, so might be a little shaky. I might do some videos like this, but my figure reviews and whatnot will be more, will have the stand and won't be as shaky or anything like that. But, so I finished Watchmen. It was very good. Definitely not for younger audiences. I mean, I'm not by any means like an adult or anything, but it was not for kids, definitely. But my parents decided I could read it. I can't watch the movie yet, but I decided I could read it, and that was really good. It took me maybe maybe a month, but I don't just sit down and read for an hour a day or anything. So if you might be able to finish it in a couple of weeks, and different people have different paces. But it was a very good book, and one thing I'd kind of like to talk about is the sequels and whatnot. I think Watchmen shouldn't have had any sequels because it kind of tarnishes the original, because in this, spoilers ahead, and I'd highly recommend you not watch this if you have not read the book yet, because I knew some of this stuff because I watched videos on comic books, and it's got the infamous twist, and it's still very, very good, but I think it would have been that much better if I had not known anything about it to start with. So, it's a very good book. The sequels, I have not read Doomsday Clock yet, which is the main one, and then there's going to be, I was watching the second, what was it called, DC Fandom the other day, and that, can't remember who's writing it. It's not Alan Moore. Alan Moore hates everything to do with Watchmen except for Watchmen, the original. He might hate that, I don't know. But he just hates the movie, hates the sequel. And I think he's got a right to, because it's satire. Now, you can like it, and I like it, and you're not really supposed to look up to many of the characters in it, but like if you find those characters cool or anything, like people love the Joker, well, obviously you shouldn't look up to the Joker. I'm actually being the comedian for Halloween because it would be a fun and kind of easy costume to do, kind of basic. But and I might do a video on that costume when I finish it. But so I'm being the comedian for Halloween, but it's like, if you like the characters, you like the characters. You're not necessarily supposed to look up to them like Rorschach and whatnot. And Rorschach, for example, is just is basically to symbolize how dark superheroes we're getting from, and actually I've heard that Moore wanted to use, I know he's not the only writer. I can't remember the other writer's name, though, off the top of my head, or the person he worked with on it. But Moore wanted to use DC Golden Age characters, who, but DC did not want him to use that, because, again, it would be making them look bad. Yes, there's a word for it, a specific word for it. It's better, but it'd be making them look bad and not heroic. So he did not get permission to this. And again, I was watching some stuff on it, so I think it's true, it might not be, but the contract was to get for a year DC could do whatever they want with it. Yes. So for a year, DC could do whatever they wanted for it, with it, and after a year, Alan Moore got the rights back. Well, he expected to get those rights back after a year or whatever. It was okay. So he was supposed to. The contract was, as long as it was in print, DC could use it for shirts, toys, whatever. But it ended up being a smash hit, and so, which it wasn't expected to be, and it's satire. It's not like supposed to be a like your normal comic book, but they weren't expecting it to be a smash hit, so DC just reprinted it and reprinted it and reprinted it, and it's very cheap online because they just reprinted it constantly. So there's tons and tons of those books, just so they could use the rights for toys, movies, and whatnot. Zack Snyder made a movie in 2000 and it was 7 or 3. That's a big gap, but it was either 07 or 03, and I can't remember which one. Maybe it was 05. That's a big gap, but I can't remember. It's one of those three, I think. But he has a movie, and then there is an HBO show. I haven't heard anything about the HBO show. I heard the movie was kind of controversial, mostly because of its finish, which has to do with the twist. Instead of, again, the spoiler warning, and don't continue watching this if you haven't read the book, especially if you intend on reading the book soon. But, sorry, I lost track of what I was talking about. But, the finish has Ozymandias in the comic book, who ends up being the mask killer. Drop a little squid. It was some, thing he cloned. It had to do with genetic engineering. But he cloned something and then, dropped it on New York. And when they're teleporting it, and they're trying to figure out how to teleport stuff, well, anything that got teleported either died on the spot of, it, scared them to death, basically, or they, a heart attack, or they exploded. So, well, this thing's massive, so he counted on it exploding, or just continue to terrorize them and get the point across. And this is because, throughout the book, a nuclear war you can see brewing. Nixon is in office, has been in office for a lot longer than he actually was in the book, which I didn't feel like had a lot of bearing on the plot. But then again, I don't know a lot about, the political climate with him and his policies and whatnot. I know he was the only president to be kicked out of office. No, he wasn't, because he resigned. He resigned presidency. But, I know he had something to do with the Watergate scandal. But so he might had a bigger effect on the book than I thought, just because of I don't know a lot about his presidency. But so Nixon's been president, and he's trying to figure out what to do with the Cold War that's going on, and Russia has invaded, or the USSR has invaded Afghanistan, and I think it was Afghanistan. And so they're thinking they might have to arm the missiles, the nuclear missiles, which was the huge thing, because you're gonna wipe out at least half the planet, because it'd be suicide if one of them fired. So that was the whole point. And Ozymandias gets Dr. Manhattan, who's ultra powerful, godlike, to leave the planet, because Dr. Manhattan was the one keeping the arms, keeping the USSR at bay, because he's ultra powerful, and could just snap and their continent was gone. But an entire continent was gone. But so back to the Rorschach thing. Rorschach is I know I'm making points and then not following up on them because I just get lost talking. This wasn't something I prepared for. I was just like, well, I'm gonna do a video on this. So Rorschach is meant to show how dark superheroes got. I would think of Batman in particular, who should be a little brooding, but he doesn't have to be like dry and humorless all the time. But that's just my 2 cents on it. But it turns out that Alan Moore created the coolest character to ever exist on accident, so that backfired on him, and Rorschach is a fan favorite now. So talking about sequels, I think that it should not have gotten sequels personally, because I think it kind of defeats the point. It dulls the original book, because in the original book there's a possibility Rorschach's journal gets published and taken seriously, which shows that the squid is a hoax, and that gets it's technically an alien, but it looks like a squid, so I'm just gonna call it the squid throughout the video. So that would basically destroy Ozymandias' whole plot, which now I realize that I didn't follow back up on that. Ozymandias dropped a squid on New York to basically make it look like there is something even worse on the horizon, and make the USSR and USA have to get together and stopping millions and millions of deaths, but also creating millions of deaths. So that's where the controversy lies there. At the end of the book, it's like, well, will Rorschach's journal get published? Because it's in like a little pile. He mailed it to one of the little to a newspaper, and so you see it and you're like, well, that's got everything about Ozymandias and his theories and whatnot, and it could expose them. And Rorschach's killed at the end of the book too, so he can't just go and tell him. He's the one who says, this isn't right. Ozymandias just killed millions of people, and we're just gonna let him go. So I'm going to go tell them what happened. So Dr. Manhattan doesn't like this, because Dr. Manhattan agrees with Ozymandias, and Dan Dreinberg, or Night Owl 2, is a little on the fence about it. He thinks Ozymandias is bluffing, because once again he was a hero, and he wouldn't think that Ozymandias would do that, but that's just Ozymandias believes that he has to do that. So he seems on the fence. I'm not sure what ended up happening with him. I'm going to read Doomsday Clock at some point. I don't own it. My dad says he has it somewhere, so maybe I'll get it from him. Well, read that. And I just think, because it turns out in Doomsday Clock, and spoilers for Doomsday Clock 2, because I also know some about that just from videos, is the arms race continues. The threat of nuclear war continues, because Rorschach's journal gets printed out in the paper, published, sorry, I can't speak today, and so so the war continues, because they find out it's a hoax by Ozymandias, which, so that continues, and I can't remember exactly why, but Dr. Manhattan teleports to what is now the DC universe. In the autobiography Under the Hood, by Hollis Mason, or Mason Hollis. It's Hollis Mason, who's the original Night Owl. Which you can find that online. It's about 14 pages long, and I just downloaded the PDF because my uncle loaned me Watchmen, so I gave that back to him and downloaded the PDF of that. So I'm reading that. Says that he took inspiration. He was a police, and he took inspiration from the Superman, the first Action comic, which featured Superman. So those existed, but it turns out that because of the Keene Act, which made it illegal for superheroes to exist, except for a couple that worked for the government, like Comedian and Dr. Manhattan, because Dr. Manhattan was the key reason USSR didn't invade the US in the book. So, the Keene Act, the comics understandably went out of fashion because you don't want to encourage that anymore. And so you don't get long-running stories. So, the comics did exist in this world, so they go over, and it turns out the comics are real in another dimension to them, which makes me wonder if the Watchmen comic gets published in the DC universe, which that universe might or might not be the main timeline anymore because of New 52 and then Rebirth. I cannot remember when Doomsday Clock got published, but and where it fell into as far as the reboots. So they go over, and there's another Rorschach who follows up, and it turns out that Rorschach 2, is the son of Rorschach 1's psychiatrist, because he goes to jail, and then and his wife, who split. Or see, one thing I'm a bit confused on is they both die because they're in the vicinity of the squid, but according to one of the things I saw on the thing, they divorce. There's tension because Rorschach's done a toll on his mind, and he's trying to figure out Rorschach, but they don't ever divorce, or because they're arguing the second before they die. She threatens to divorce him because two people are fighting, and he wants to go help, but she wants him to focus on her, and so she threatens to divorce him, and probably would have if they hadn't been, destroyed in a giant blast. But this video is getting lengthy. But so the sequels, it does, like I said, dull on thing, and one of the big things, I heard Doomsday Clock was mediocre. Again, I haven't read it, so I'm not going to say it's mediocre. That's just for you to decide. And I don't think it should have happened. There's a new Rorschach coming out that I saw on DC Fandom. I might have already mentioned this, but I don't know who it's written by. That will follow Rorschach 2, I assume. I think if you're going to do anything for Watchmen, and I'd like to see this too, you do prequels. So I would like to see a show or a comic on the Minutemen, which is the predecessor to Watchmen, kind of like the JSA to the JLA. And I'd like to see a show or comic on the comedian's time in Vietnam, who he was sent over there, and you see him do not so great things. But I'd like to see that. I think that'd be a hard-hitting story. And I'd like to see stuff on the Watchmen before the events of Watchmen. You get flashbacks, but before the main plot. And I'd definitely like to see stuff specifically on Dreinberg and Rorschach. Dreinberg is Night Owl 2, if I didn't mention that earlier. So speaking of Dreinberg, one of the key things I noticed with the Watchmen is it's focused more on character development than like the superhero stuff. Like there are people I don't even have any idea what they do, like both the Silk Spectres, Lori, and the other one, her mother. Her mother served with the Minutemen, and Lori was with the Watchmen or the Crime Busters. I didn't realize. I didn't know if the Watchmen were called the Watchmen in that universe, or if, because the Crime Busters thing fell apart, but it was basically the Watchmen. It was orchestrated by another Minuteman, Doctor. Sorry, I forgot his name, but it was a Minuteman, and uh, so his whole thing fell apart. So I'm not sure if they were called the Watchmen. There is the phrase you see in graffiti and whatnot, "Who watches the Watchmen?" But I'm not sure if that's just a nickname or something because they're watching over the city. Um. So so I'd like to see some more Watchmen stuff, and whether it be TV shows or whatnot. And a lot of people will talk about people not understanding Watchmen, and it has really been turned into something it's not. But I don't think it saying, "Oh, you shouldn't buy a Rorschach T-shirt because Rorschach is an awful person and he's supposed to be satire." Well, if you thought Rorschach was cool, then you buy a Rorschach T-shirt. That's fine. You see plenty of people with Joker T-shirts, and he's a homicidal maniac too. So I don't get why people complain about that all that much. Now, when it comes to adaptations, I can see that a little bit. Like the guy I watched a video a little bit ago, I thought this guy was a bit of a nerd, and just about, again, the whole, well, you shouldn't enjoy this because it's satire, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't be like buying this stuff because it's destroying the point of Watchmen. I just thought he was a bit of a. I won't say his channel, partially because I forgot it, and partially because like my opinion shouldn't affect his channel. I don't think. And I doubt it would if I did share his channel, but he was just talking about how, like, Zack Snyder, who we all know is all about that gritty, and talking about how he wanted to make a violent, raunchy thing, and that is taking it out of, like, because that's just doing what Watchmen is protesting, or it's doing kind of a poor job of protesting. It hit just because of how it was received. But that's what it's supposed to be protesting. And so I think the prequel route is the way you go. And there are character arcs and stuff that I think it'd be sad to sacrifice. Like Rorschach 2, who I was talking about earlier. Well, he had no idea that Rorschach was, racist and homophobe, and which, I mean, he might not have been those. I can't remember. I think they did mention him something about being a racist, but being a just bad person in general. And he realized that, so he wanted to quit. Well, Batman gets him to Batman gets him to become Rorschach 2 again, to change it for the better. So, and Batman is the one who discourages it, because he finds Rorschach's journal or something, and he's like, well, this dude's an awful person. Why would he want to carry on his name? Well, Batman realizes, he can change the name of Rorschach for the better, and make that mask into a symbol of something else. So I thought Rorschach was really interesting in the book, and you can't help but find him cool. you know, he might not be a good person, but it's hard to, his look, his way he talks is weird. Going back to Dan Reinberg, it felt like more of a character study, especially with people like him. When you think of, and people have talked about, you know, Batman, Bruce Wayne is really, Batman is really Bruce Wayne, you know, like, he's more Batman than Bruce Wayne, and Superman is more Clark Kent than Superman. But when I say Clark Kent, you think of the guy that's Superman, and when I say Bruce Wayne, you think of the guy that's Batman. But with it, it really feels like, oh, this is Dan Dreinberg, who also happens to be Night Owl, too. And he was I thought, one of the most interesting characters in the book. It's because he comes out of retirement to do stuff. I would have liked to see how he ended up dealing with the whole Ozymandias thing. But, I'm not, we might have in Doomsday Clock. After I read that, I might do another one of these that, might not be as long as this, because it doesn't feel like it's been long, but it's been 26 minutes already. So, sorry for the length of the episode. I know I don't like sitting through a 40-minute episode of something. But I thought it was a good read. You should definitely do it. There are heartbreak moments in there. And I know I said if you haven't read it, then go. But, there's some people who figured, you know, I don't care, because I did that too. So read it again if you've already read it. Maybe you missed something. Definitely go online. Just search Under the Hood by Hollis Mason, and you'll find a PDF that you can download and read, because I skipped over that in the book because I was just trying to get to the main parts. I don't like skipping over things, but it felt unnecessary to read at the time. But it's interesting. I've been reading a little bit of it. It has some sad moments in there too. So that was all. That was a lot, but that was pretty much it for this video. I'll talk to you guys soon about, I might get a Moon Knight figure coming in a little bit. We just gotta find it. And Joker multiverse figure I might do when my dad gets home, so I can put up the stand, because it's just a lot easier. And I think I'll do a Count Dooku review at some point too, on the Black Series figure. I haven't done one of those. But anyway, that's all I have for now. See ya.